Hey.
This is the Burnsville Economic Development Commission meeting here. I'm Chairman Peter Zany, Vice Chairman Ari Silke on my left. Got a new member, alternate Dan Olson. Welcome, Dan. Skip Nienhaus is on further to the left. Right next to me is Roger Clippy. And we've got Craig Reavers. Whoops.
Chris Andruski.
Chris, all screwed up, okay. Chris Andreski, and then Chris John. Okay, another new person here is David Scherner.
Scherner, yeah.
Welcome, David. And
Thank you.
Sandra Copen is another alternate. So we'll get the meeting started with the adoption of the agenda. Need a motion to adopt the agenda as written.
I move that.
Second?
I'll second.
Discussion none. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Approval of minutes from the March 12th, 2014 meeting.
I move.
Okay,
Second.
second. Discussion none. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Open for business forum. Looks like we've got some people out here this time. Do we?
I don't think anybody wants to speak, Mr. Chair.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. All righty. Review, item number 4, open to business, first quarter 2014 results. And that's Skip.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you know, this is the second year for the Open to Business program in Burnsville. It is a countywide program, provides free consulting services to any business or any resident in Burnsville. And we've started giving you quarterly results of the program. And the first quarter of this year, in Burnsville, our consultant, Laurie Crow, has met with 9 clients. In the county, she's met with 58 clients. What is interesting is, of those 58 clients that she has met with, 31 of them are possible startup businesses. And as you can see from the slide, they kind of cover all segments, very heavy in the service and the food industries. We did have one new business start up in the first quarter of this year based on the Open to Business results. It's actually a senior travel service, an individual who already provides assisted care, in-home care to seniors, saw a need that sometimes when seniors are going on vacations or traveling to see family, they like to have someone go with, help them negotiate the airport and things like that. She has actually started up a business in which she does that. She provides that service for senior travel. In the county, we saw 3 businesses. One was the one that occurred in Burnsville, and then there's also a retail business that was started in the county, and there's a fitness business that was started in the county in the first quarter. And one business in the county also, through the program, did receive a $30,000 loan to get started. As last year, the Open to Business seems to be very successful here in Burnsville and has been very, very helpful. And, Mr. Chair, I would certainly stand for any questions regarding the first quarter results.
Any questions, gentleman, lady?
Looks like business is picking up.
Yes.
This is good.
How does this compare to a year ago, this first quarter? You know, Skip?
From a number of clients met with both in Burnsville and in the county, this is a little down from the first quarter of last year. But the thing to be mindful of is, like most new programs, we came out of the chute from a marketing perspective extremely hard, did a lot of marketing, and I think we grabbed a lot of pent-up demand. It also seemed to me like in the first quarter of last year, a lot of the clients that Laurie met with were folks that were thinking of starting a business and probably had done very little planning. So a lot of her meetings were 1 or 2 meetings only, and then they said, you know what, this isn't for me. The impression I've gotten is this quarter, a lot of these meetings are with more solid or more substantial types of clients. So I think, like anything that was brand new last year, we had people trying it. The thing to remember is, if one of our residents is looking to start a business and it's really not a good thing for them to do, for them to go through this process and learn that is a positive also, because the last thing obviously we wouldn't have happen is a resident start a business and fail and everything else. So I don't know that I would be overly concerned that the numbers are down, because I think the strength of the numbers we have this first quarter of this second year are better than the strength of the mass numbers we had last time.
Could we have a comparison in the future? of
Absolutely.
last year?
Absolutely.
Or at least an aggregation, so that second quarter, we can see the first quarter results in the report, then just compare to see how we're trending.
Absolutely.
Any other comments? Hearing none, I guess there's no action by us, we're just moving forward, is that right?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Number 5, application for City of Burnsville for an ordinance amending Title 10, Chapters 20, 21, 22, 24, and 25 of the Burnsville City Code regarding permitted and conditional uses. And we've got, Skip, you're not...
Skip's not doing this one.
No, our planner, Mr.
Chris Slania?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. My name is Chris Laney. I'm one of the planners the city has on staff here at City Hall. I work very closely with Skip. I know some of you through past meetings, but I've actually not attended EDC meetings, so thank you for having me tonight. The ordinance amendment in front of you this evening was instigated by the City of Burnsville. This has got a little bit of history, and I'll touch on that briefly. This was originally instigated by a business that was operating illegally in a building in town. We discovered that by accident, went through a few processes and some study, and realized maybe this use should be permitted, or at least allowable in this zoning district. The city took it upon itself, hired a consultant to do a review of this, and eventually, over a number of months, amended the zoning ordinance to allow sports performance training centers, somewhat different than a gym or a health club, but in some ways very similar. That sparked some additional discussion at staff level with some of the property owners as well, and we decided to continue this study, look at the permitted and conditional uses that are in the industrial districts, specifically the I-1 and the I-2 zoning districts. Those uses have not been looked at for quite a while. There have been changes, there have been minor tweaks, but there's not been a substantial review of those uses in many, many years. So that's really where this started. Again, we've used the city's planning consultant, Northwest Associated Consultants, and we've looked at the conditional uses, the permitted uses, how they fit in the zoning district, if they fit at all. Are they a benefit? Are they a hindrance? Are they a nuisance? And we've I've tried to be very concise, and we'll break this down kind of use by use as what changes we're looking at, and see if the commission agrees. First off, I'd like to touch on, before we get into some of the slides I prepared, the difference between permitted uses, conditional uses, planned unit developments, and all those other jargon terms that Skip and I use every day. Permitted uses are by right allowed in a zoning ordinance, by right allowed in a zoning district. They are typical to clothing store, bookstore, sometimes restaurants, very general uses that the city has no concerns with. Office space, warehouse space, these are examples of permitted uses. What that means is, from a staff level, I'll take a look at it. We want to make sure there's sufficient parking available. We want to make sure that the space they're going into works functionally, and from a code standpoint, building and fire code, it works, but assuming they meet criteria, we would have no reason to deny them entry into a tenant space or into a building. Second of all, it is not something that would instigate a planning commission or city council review. It is, again, by right, that use is entitled in that zoning district or that property. That is the shortest process a business or a tenant can have to fall within that permitted category. The second category would be conditional. These are uses that we expect will work in a zoning district, but for whatever reason, traffic, noise, odors, things like that, these are uses that need to be reviewed by the Planning Commission and acted on by the City Council prior to going into a space. As part of that public hearing, or excuse me, as part of that conditional use permit, there is a public hearing. So neighboring property owners would be notified of that request. The property owner applies to the city, requests a conditional use permit to go into such a space. A good example of a conditional use permit is outdoor display and sales, car dealerships. Burnsville's got quite a few of them. Each one of those has gone through the Planning Commission, City Council, maybe once or maybe a number of times for their original approval, expansions, things like that. Again, because their product is stored outside, typically there's a lot of traffic, there's typically a lot of lighting, possibly noise, pager systems, a whole slew of items that could become a nuisance to the neighbors or possibly detrimental to the neighborhood. The City Council has the ability or has the right to look at that before they start occupying a space. And again, that process can be time-consuming. It can be costly. It's not prohibited by any means, but it's something we take very seriously and we take a good look at it. And finally, the planned unit development, the PUD for short, that is also a process that requires Planning Commission and City Council approval. That is, sometimes it's a use that from a staff standpoint, or excuse me, from a city ordinance standpoint, we didn't necessarily anticipate that specific use in that zoning district. So it is, or it's too similar from something else that's listed in the zoning district that we can fit it into the category of permitted use or conditional use. So then we reach out to the PUD. The PUD, its authority is in the zoning ordinance, but it's actually a contract between the city and the developer to perform certain things or act accordingly, do certain things both on the city's behalf and the developer's behalf. There's a lot more into the PUD process, but that gives you a glimpse of these, and I think that will help. I appreciate Commissioner Reavers mentioned that before we got started, and that will really help outline the slides we're getting into at this point. So to start with, I've broken the presentation down into a few parts. The first is conditional uses that are in the I-1 and the I-2 district that are currently conditional. Staff is proposing to take to permitted. As I said before, these are items that right now would need Planning Commission and Council approval. We feel they're reasonable, and we'd like to move them just to permitted. Again, staff takes a look at it, but it would not be in front of the Planning Commission or Council. Art studio, interior decorating studio, photography studio, music, contractor services, electrical, HVAC, plumbing. These are typically services that you would call to your house or your business for maintenance or during a construction situation. upholstery service shop. Again, these are, for most of these are businesses that are inside a building, except for the music studio, probably aren't going to create a lot of noise, probably aren't going to create a lot of odors. Again, things that are probably not very controversial or would be much of a nuisance to the neighboring businesses. So from a zoning standpoint, this increases the potential businesses or the tenants that you could see in the I-1 district. These are a number of uses that are currently conditional in the I-1 district that we are recommending removal. Armories, convention halls, sports arenas, religious institutions, fraternal organizations, bowling alley, game room, billiard, funeral home, nursing home, hospitals, museums, galleries. Why would staff want to remove those businesses or those uses from the district? And it comes into play on a number of layers. A lot of those are high assembly spaces. They're going to generate or could generate a lot of people, a lot of traffic, a lot of parking. I should have started with this, but the I-1 district is north of Highway 13, around the Cliff Road area, Lark Industrial Park, 12th Avenue, Portland, one of our older industrial areas. There's a lot of truck traffic in that area. There's not a lot of parking, general parking available, and we also don't want conflicts with existing tenants, manufacturing, machine shop, things like that, things that businesses that have been there that create noise or bring in trucks and things like that, and next thing you know, you have somebody trying to assemble for whatever reason, or an art gallery opening up next door when you've got a machine shop as a neighboring space. Our intent here is to preserve that industrial area, make sure it has the ability to grow and attract new businesses. There are other areas, I'll jump back to this slide, there are other areas in town, a handful of other zoning districts where a bowling alley could go, or a billiard hall, or a religious institution or a convention hall. So we're not saying we don't want these uses in Burnsville. We're saying we believe there's better locations from a traffic standpoint, from a compatibility standpoint, than the I-1 district. Very similar discussion, other conditional uses that are currently in the zoning district. Staff is proposing to remove liquor stores, restaurants, retail as a principal use, taverns, nightclubs, theaters, thrift stores. Many of the same reasons. Increased traffic and parking, conflicts with existing uses in the industrial districts. More importantly, these uses are covered in other zoning districts. Liquor stores, restaurants, theaters are covered along the 42 corridor, where you're getting a lot of that regional shopping, a lot more, I would say, more retail orientated than some of the spaces that are off of Lark Industrial Boulevard, tucked in a corner of the city. So again, very similar reasons why we're supporting removal of these. And finally, uses that are not in the I-1 or the I-2 currently that staff is recommending to be added in there. The first two, call center, data center, as Skip pointed out, similar names, very different uses. Call center would be a significant amount, or could be a significant amount of people in an office setting. Call center is possibly few people, but a large amount of,
You meant data center.
sorry, thank you, data center, a significant amount of infrastructure with computer and other IT equipment. We feel these are uses that could be permitted within the zoning district. We're not looking to take these through the Planning Commission or Council. And industrial food production. This is interesting. This is something that Skip has been talking about for a while, but has just recently got the rest of us on board. And in reading what other communities are doing, this seems to be taking off. Growing, raising food and other products, other produce within a building. You might have heard the terms aquaponics or aquaculture, basically growing crops, growing vegetables and stuff inside a building with the use of water, no soil involved. These are high technology uses. They are growing more popular for any number of reasons. The technology is catching up. The price of land is going up. Suburbs like Burnsville or even St. Paul, Minneapolis have older buildings that have the infrastructure to support this or the space to support it. Rents are low, and it's a great use for the building. We feel because of really the newness, the possible odor and other conflicts that could arise from this, we would rather not put the permitted use, but as a conditional use. Certainly staff would have to learn quite a bit about this if a proposal came through, and we feel it could be a great opportunity to expand this. I believe some of these topics were covered last time when the sports performance item came up, but we've heard from businesses, property owners within that I-1 and I-2 district that really feel that is a great asset to the community. As I said, it is the oldest industrial park. It does not have the highest rents. It does have vacant space available. We see a lot of startup companies go in there that are maybe 1 or 2 employees that are taking just a few thousand square feet until they grow, until they have a customer demand or something like that to be in a highly visible area. This is great for them. It puts them in a good location for truck traffic, easy to get to Cliff, easy to get to 13, and then to the interstates.
Excuse me, would that be also northwest quadrant too?
The I-2 is the northwest, up along the Minnesota River. That's a lot of the I-2 district. So again, it does look like we're taking a lot away from these districts. We're proposing to remove a lot of the conditional uses. We feel those are uses that where Burnsville is right now and where these industrial districts are right now aren't a good fit. By removing those, hopefully we can preserve some of that, those tenant spaces, preserve some of the land, and allow these small businesses and these startups to go in there, grow as they need to, and maintain an industrial district. With that, Commissioners, I know there was quite a bit of information in your packets. I'll stand for any questions. Hopefully Skip and I can field anything that comes up.
This came up actually last meeting where we approved that sports performance training, and there was question, because a lot of these we were wondering, well, why is this in there and that in there? And this is actually very appropriate to do. I commend you for doing it. And I for once, think this is perfect. I like your recommendations.
Thank you.
Chris? Commissioner?
There's a, you're saying the I-1 covers between 13, or Highway 13 up through Cliff, the 12th Avenue area, over by the high school, basically, is what we're looking at.
Correct.
So there are existing businesses there that fall into the category that we're trying to remove,
There are some, correct.
and those would have to vacate, correct? if
No,
this is true?
they would not vacate, they would fall under the non-conforming status, grandfathered in status. The city has not, and I legally, I don't think you can do it anymore, knock on somebody's door and ask them to leave. So
Okay.
they, as long as they were entered that zoning district when that use was in place and received permits, et cetera. So they would continue to operate as long as they chose. I don't know that they would be able to expand, but they would be, they could continue there for as long as they wanted.
Okay.
Mr. Cliffy?
I was just going to say that expansion would require some approvals. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, sounds good.
How about the saleability of those businesses? If they were to sell and an asset purchased and someone came in under a different name?
That's a good point. Very good question, Commissioner. The biconditional use, it runs with the property, not necessarily with that business or with the property owner. It runs with the property. As long as the space is not vacated for more than 6 months, that use may continue.
Grandfather is continuation as long as there's an
Correct.
existing.
So if businesses are being bought and sold and they're staying in the same place, we have no issues with that.
Any other comments, Commissioners?
Yeah, so you're proposing to remove items that previously were under a conditional use.
Correct. Correct.
But if it's conditional use, all that means is that the planning commission, there's a kind of a broader process, and the request can still be denied.
It's
It's not
Yes.
permitted, which means that the planning commission and staff will have the discretion to weigh the pros and the cons and say that this, in the interests of the city, we don't believe that we're going to issue a conditional use permit. So I understand the need to clean it up. I guess my question is, why eliminate the flexibility? I understand if you're going from permitted to conditional, but if you're going to conditional to removing it entirely, I guess I just don't understand why remove the flexibility. The planning commission can always deny it. You can recommend that the use not be approved.
That's a great point, Commissioners. The question, can conditional uses be denied, is a yes and no answer. There are performance standards, there are certain criteria within the zoning ordinance they need to satisfy, including but not limited to parking, building, fire code issues, and so forth. The idea that they are permitted use in the zoning ordinance, that implies that at some point the council or the city thought about that use and thought it's a good use for that district. The more compliant a use is, the harder it is to deny them. More importantly, once they're occupying a building, if we do run into problems, it's very difficult to remove them also. One of the, if I can get to the right slide, the uses that you see in front of you, staff categorize these as more of assembly uses rather than commercial in nature. We do not have a lot of these in that zoning district now. We feel it'd be very easy to make a clean break, if you will, and rather than dealing with some of them being non-conforming and grandfathered in, it'd be more simple to eliminate them now. Your point is, you can do it either way.
Well, as a follow-up, and I'm glad you went back to this slide, there are some items in here that I would agree with you. It's prudent to remove them as public policy, that the city doesn't feel that these types of things are appropriate in the I-1, I-2. But museums, galleries, and then if you go to the next one, restaurants, tavern, stores, I'm not sure that they are going to generate the type of parking and mass use that we might anticipate. So, I understand staff did obviously a lot of research on this. So in the planning commission already reviewed this, correct?
They reviewed this initial concept. They haven't seen the final language yet.
Okay. I just didn't know if we're taking off more than we may want to, because I think there's quite a range between a restaurant or a thrift store and an assembly hall. But so it just raised an interesting question that it's quite a broad spectrum of conditional uses that are proposed for removal, and I don't know if all the reasons are the same for each particular business type.
When I think the concern is there a lot of unused land or space because of this policy, and now we're sitting here going, well, how do we fill this? Because to your point, you can always deny it through the process, but now you have to go back and change a city ordinance if someone wants to come in and do something because it's been sitting vacant for 5 years. We've got a lot of vacant spaces in the city of Burnsville right now that we're trying to fill, and so I would tend to agree with you.
Well, and that's ultimately where I was going is what I would fear is that we cut off a lot of flexibility, and then we're here a year later once the 13 construction is completed.
Right.
Some of that area begins to develop, and we want a restaurant to go in, or we want, there's more traffic in that area than before. So, again, of course, city always has the flexibility to come back and make a change, but that's going to take time. That means businesses that want to get in are going to have to wait for the change to be made.
Commissioners,
Let me take the opposite of that side. I think when I looked at these inside an industrial district, these kinds of uses, I thought, boy, that's odd to put some of these in that kind of a category. So I commend staff for this. I fully support the document and the recommendation. I think it's the right thing to do. And I agree with you, too, is if it's listed there as a conditional use and you don't have a strong reason, you get sued and you're going to be in there letting that stuff go in anyway. So I think this is a smart way to do it. I'll take the opposite side of that. I like the recommendation.
I would ask, and Skip, maybe you can chime in, how much of this decision by staff was, how much of the 13.5 project was taken into consideration? Because that's going to clean up a lot of the bottleneck, and there's going to be a lot more traffic on 13. So maybe there is going to be more of an attractiveness for some of these more retail-oriented, maybe, to your point, right now it makes sense, but with 13 opening up, and with Greater Minnesota, we're always promoting Burnsville just in general. Was that taken into consideration? Or?
it was not, Commissioners, to be honest, based on really, it started with the I-1 district and really focusing on that area because of its distance and proximity to 5 and 13. It wasn't something we considered, but this is a good conversation. Also, keep in mind, I've got these on two slides, but you can nitpick and pull one or two of these out. Don't necessarily look at them as all or nothing. If there's a use or two that seems reasonable, we can certainly adjust accordingly.
If I could, Mr. Chair. One thing to remember, Commissioners, about 5 and 13 is that a good portion of the parcels that are on the north side of 13 running along 5 are actually zoned B4. So these uses would still be available there. The I-2 and what we refer to as the Minnesota River Quadrant is more to the north of the quadrant, more into the more truly industrial area. So there is that, kind of that, those parcels that are right along the north side of 13, from 35W through the new interchange, all of this would still be allowed.
Further comments, Commissioners?
Maps of I-1 and I-2 were they included with the materials? I don't think I saw it, but I don't know.
No, Commissioners, if you can give me a minute, I may be able to get something up.
If it's possible, I might be overthinking where I-1 and I-2 are. I might have a broader picture in my head of what it is than what it actually is.
In most of your concerns, Commissioner, for 13, I think those are going to be alleviated. In fact, we can get the technology to pull up the zoning map.
Okay, hopefully this works. You can see it.
There you go, move that.
Okay, we'll deal with what we can. Thankfully, it landed on the right half of town. So, right down the middle is 35W. You'll see Highway 13 bisecting right through here. Cliff Road right through here. Let's see. To put it in perspective, the high school sits right here. Everything in this light gray is the I-1 district. Lark Industrial Boulevard is right here. 12th Avenue, Rupp Drive. This is the I-1 district. This is the only section of the city that is zoned I-1. In comparison, then, this area, the Minnesota River Quadrant, this is Cliff running through here. The quarry, the landfill sit right here. This is the only part of Burnsville that's zoned I-2. Whoops, that is not what I wanted to do. So, again, it's certainly, it's good to have that discussion.
Yeah.
And, again, that's why it's in front of you this evening.
That Walmart is right off in the I-1 district, is it not?
Walmart sits right here.
Yeah.
Oh, it is on the other side, okay.
What's that light red?
Right in this area.
Yeah.
That is B3. That's more of a general business district. Yes, it's along 13. A lot of our office space is zoned B3. A lot of our retail, most of Burnsville Center and the 42 area are zoned B3.
And the purple behind, north of 13 there off of the, is that that new,
Part of the city, isn't it?
That's where I'm at.
no, right in here, this
I
stuff in
went
here.
south of 13. Yes.
No, I'm thinking north of 13 and west of 35. That purple in there, light blue maybe. Really.
There you go.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
that
is also industrial.
right.
None of the changes you're talking about here would affect that.
Right. Sounds good.
Yeah, so I-2, that helps to clarify. I-1, it goes up north of Cliff and south of Cliff up to Highway 13?
Correct. Correct.
And is that where the majority of businesses that would be grandfathered in currently reside? To the question about the non-conforming, is that most of the businesses are in that area? I thought there's a lot more commercial activity in that area than
A lot of
warehouses, but I could be wrong.
this is the stretch along Nicollet between Cliff and 13, a lot of that is office warehouse, bigger buildings. It somewhat feels industrial, but it is a different zoning district. Really, I think, again, I guess that is part of the reason we didn't, in talking through this, we didn't have a conversation with the change in traffic or once 5 and 13 wraps up.
Yeah.
Chris, in the I-1, do you know off the top of your head a couple businesses that are in there, maybe on the list or not on the list?
Is that where Pepsi is?
Yep.
Pepsi's in there. What else?
Pepsi's in there. Boy, Skip, can you? There are.
The old Hostess Bakery was.
Yep.
There's a burger.
There's a number of.
Yeah, and the old Hostess Bakery is in what could easily be a warehouse building.
Correct.
Is there any retail in that?
Isn't there Burger
There
King
is
too?
there is very little retail. Fastenal.
The Valley Pools and Spas.
Yep. Valley Pools and Spas is down on Cliff. Fastenal's in there. A lot of the businesses are, or a lot of the buildings are multi-tenant buildings, where you could have garage door companies. I think Mako and a number of auto body. There's a number of upholstery shops down there. There's light manufacturing. There's Diane's Candles is down there. United, I was going to say United Properties. United Rental is down there.
And if I could, Mr. Chair, we do allow a portion of retail in the industrial district. And actually, and I don't believe we covered it here, one of the proposals right now, it's, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, it's 10% of your space up to 850 square feet can be, so you could do some retail in front of your manufacturing. One of the proposed changes is actually to change the square footage to 1,000 square footage. So some of that retail with manufacturing behind it that we see in this industrial would still stay. It's just the standalone retail would no longer be in there as a conditional use.
So as a point of reference, Burger King.
Yes.
Is Burger King in I-1?
Burger King is
Or is,
not
or is it not considered a restaurant?
They're in that pink area, aren't they?
correct.
I thought it's on the other side of
It's
12th
on the
Avenue.
west side of 12th Avenue.
I thought it's on the northwest corner of
Yes,
that intersection.
I'm sorry. I'm
Right.
sorry. It is right here because Fastenal is right here.
Right.
That would have been a conditional use in the I-1 district.
But that's what's being proposed to be removed.
That's a grandfather.
Yeah, I just want to, so that's an example of a restaurant that's currently there,
Yep.
that if Burger King wanted to come in after this passed, they would not be able to locate in, okay.
What is the mood of the commercial building owners in that district? I mean, you might have mentioned it before, and I apologize if you have, but
They, I guess the best way I can represent it is they're seeing a lot of, I hate to use the word startup companies, but they're seeing a lot of companies that aren't looking, need low overhead costs. They have very limited employees. They don't need a lot of visibility. A lot of their products are coming in by truck or UPS or something like that. They don't need to be up on 42, up on County Road 42. They don't need a lot of signage, and they don't have a lot of customer walk-in, stumble in off the street. They are either a destination for their customers, or all the business they do is internet and UPS. Skip.
Could also, Mr. Chair, one of the hurdles that the businesses, or I should say the property owners in the old industrial area face is most of them have ceiling heights of 12 to 14 feet. if you're doing warehousing now, you're looking in the 20-plus ceiling height. So adding in the things like data centers, call centers, and the internal food production is actually a huge help to them, because those are the types of uses that can still go into a facility that has a 12 or a 14-foot ceiling height. As you get heavily into the industrial area, yes, a restaurant could use that too, but it's unlikely that's where a restaurant is going to want to locate. There's, as was pointed out by Commissioner Cherner, obviously we have a couple places here or there right along 13 that have restaurants that somewhere down the line may not have another restaurant on them. But I think in general, what I'm hearing from the property owners in the older industrial area is we need more opportunity to get businesses that can exist within a smaller ceiling height than is being demanded now in the marketplace by the warehousing and manufacturing type businesses.
And yeah, and I fully support that. Again, my only concern is, and I think I'd limit it just to the zoning south of Cliff, that we're getting pretty close to 13, and there might be other opportunities where keeping the conditional use is appropriate. Of course, I recognize, I don't know if that's a good idea, given that we're talking about I-1 and I-2 together. How to bifurcate that out, I don't know if it's worthwhile. Anyway, that's my only concern. Otherwise, I fully support expanding as much
Was
use as possible.
sports performing centers included in this as conditional?
It was, it is allowed as conditional. It probably isn't in the spreadsheet because it was still in the works as we were working on this.
And-
But it is a conditional use.
Last point, this is fairly close to Egan. So how does this affect a business deciding whether they're going to Egan or Burnsville or not? Because that's really what we're here for, is to make sure they come to Burnsville versus Egan. And I could see if I was looking at a client that was deciding where to go and there was some of this stuff taking place, I might advise them go to Egan potentially. And so how does Egan zoning laws compare to what we're proposing here? Most of that's retail, I understand, from Cliff, especially going east, but
A lot of it is retail. Once you hit Silver Bell and Egan, which is Cedar and Silver Bell is where the development's occurring now. There is substantial warehouse space down there. They are newer buildings. They are much higher ceilings, similar to what we have along in the South Cross area, the I-3 district along 42. Obviously, all the spaces are zoned industrial, but I think in that situation, they can accommodate for the higher ceilings, the warehousing space. There are older sections of Egan, but I guess I don't know how it's going to directly affect that.
Mr. Johns?
The area that we're looking at, the I-1 district, is really this. I don't know. I drive through there every day, and it isn't somewhere a lot of people are flying through there. Even if 13 opens up, it's a small traffic area really, and it does lend itself to more warehousing as a district. To be fair, the restaurants and things I was originally asking about are actually in that little B4 corner there that I was asking about being grandfathered in. There are a couple of businesses that actually are in the I-1 district, but outside of that, I don't really think that a retail place or a good restaurant would really fit in that area anyway.
Yep.
That's my personal opinion anyway.
Let's boot 'em up.
Can I make a comment?
Surely.
I work in that area, and there's a lot of traffic, and there's a lot of trucks, and there's a lot of skid loaders, and you just don't want a whole bunch of people walking around in there that are not working there, that are not supposed to be there. I think keeping it industrial is a good thing. Also, another thought we haven't really discussed is safety, police protection, that kind of stuff. There's nobody over there at night. It's very quiet. If you start putting businesses in there that have people coming and going, it just changes the dynamic of the place.
The only counter that I would have, I would agree, except that we're also proposing to make art studios, interior decorating studios, music studios permitted. So if this was an attempt to create exclusivity related to industrial, then I'd be with you, because then the goal would be, we don't want a lot of people going into this area. It seems like we're trying to simultaneously promote more activity in the area, but if we're promoting more activity in the area, that means they're going to want places to eat, they're going to want things to do nearby, they're going to want to be in that area. So, again, I mean, I'm perhaps it's a broader question of what's the goal here. If the goal is we want more people, we want more diverse businesses in the area, then I think that if we're going to pursue that intent, well, then let's pursue it in all of its forms.
And you just described a location where I'd want to put a business that was a restaurant, quite frankly, because there's a lot of traffic, there's a lot of visibility.
There's not a lot of places to eat over there. We have to
Right.
go outside.
Exactly. So
of
now I'm
the
thinking,
area.
well,
So now it's
I'm going to start a restaurant there. Let's go, second location.
All yours.
Well, all the outlying properties have got good visual,
Yeah,
really.
so.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, if I can just summarize, I don't know that we're necessarily trying to draw more people into that area or necessarily draw more businesses in, but what we're trying to do is, I think, maintain the compatibility between what's there and what could go there in the future. It's certainly reasonable. There are a couple restaurants besides Burger King. I think there's a Asian restaurant right by the old Burnsville Bowl. They do have visibility from 13. There's a lot of traffic right on that corner with Super America. I think it's reasonable if there is, again, a use or a couple uses in this area or in this list that you'd like to preserve. I think that's more than reasonable. And we can pass that along. This is scheduled for Planning Commission at the end of May, and I think the City Council will see it the first part of June.
My recommendation would be to remove galleries, and then if you could go to the next slide, just so I could, the galleries, restaurants, retail, and thrift stores from the proposed items to be removed for conditional uses, and recommend approval of the remainder of the proposal.
Is that a motion?
What are you trying to do now? You'd like to take those, you'd like to have those being permitted?
Remain as conditional uses.
Conditional. And what were those again? You want to,
Thrift stores,
yeah,
retail as principal use, restaurants, and museums,
Galleries.
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 Yeah.
Galleries on something.
Museum/galleries.
Where was that? That was on the next page.
That was on the first slide here.
Yeah,
I'm going off of the slide, not off of
okay.
the chart.
Okay, is that a motion?
That would be my motion,
Is there a
Mr.
second?
Chair.
I don't agree with that. I just think you're just
Let's-
muddling it
let's
up.
get a-
Okay.
If we're going to get a second or not. Is there a second to that motion? Hearing none, lack. Okay. Now you,
Well, I think the city is doing the right thing to try to say what are similar type businesses in this area trying to do, and how they should be, commingled in there. And I just don't know if you want to say restaurants and retail as a principal use. I'm not sure about that. I think that then you're just muddling up the zoning. I mean, the restaurants, if you have a restaurant, why wouldn't you have a liquor store in there?
That's why I think you don't do any of this as non-conditional, personally. That's my personal opinion. There's no residential area in this area. Residential is usually the greatest concern with commercial zoning. So let's let the market drive businesses to this area that are attracted to it.
Maybe the recommendation, again, my
I agree with
concern
you. That's
is,
subjective.
Yeah.
my concern is specific to that piece of I-1. I would agree with you, but we're talking about I-1 and I-2, we're talking about Burger King, and we're talking about huge warehouses.
Right.
Maybe my concern is simply, maybe the city should look at rezoning that piece
Right there on
north
13.
of 13 and south of Cliff and figure out whether we need to make it a B4, and maybe that's the more prudent approach to ensure consistency in.
That's that area right there where he's doing those. circle,
Right, exactly.
there.
Yeah, that's where I'm concerned the most. I agree with everything else. I think it makes sense. But when we're getting close to 13 and we're adjacent to a commercial, to B4, or was it B? Yeah. I think that, maybe my recommendation is more of, I like the proposal, but let's look at rezoning that particular area.
I would support that.
What's your motion, Commissioner?
Well, I don't know if this is a legitimate way to approach the motion, so I don't, yeah. See it.
Chair, I think what I'm hearing Commissioner Cherner say is on the north side of 13, actually continue the commercial zoning along the parcels that are basically fronting the north side, and down to the high school. Mm-hmm. Are you with me, Chris? Mm-hmm. Yep. So you've got two parcels there. I think
Maybe
that's-
4.
Well,
maybe
even,
two.
Yeah,
even past that, is that WUFTA right there between the high school and?
I mean, it'd be more of a broader recommendation that the city look at that particular area to see if rezoning is appropriate in light of businesses that are currently operating there, as well as, traffic along 13 and greater variety of commercial use. Obviously, I'm not going to make that contingent on approval of the proposal, so I'll move to approve the proposal, but I don't know how to, can't make one contingent
You're
on
just
the
gonna
other, I would
recommend
guess.
staff look
Yeah,
at
it's just a recommendation that staff look at it.
I second it.
Yeah.
And I think that's fine, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, even as, again, we would like a recommendation on the language tonight. There's
got it.
nothing wrong with saying a request or a suggestion that staff, or I would say that the council consider some rezonings in the 13th and 12th Avenue area for expanded B3, for an expanded B3 district. Because I certainly see your point right along the 13 frontage road. I don't know how far north you'd want to go, and I think it's going to depend parcel by parcel what's there now and what makes sense. But
doesn't the conditional use give us the ongoing discussion, whereas this makes it more permanent? And that's my concern by making this more permanent. Because right now, we've got protectionism based on the proposal for Burger King and the Chinese restaurant.
absolutely.
And I think that's a danger. If I lived on the north side of 13 and those were my two options, I'd be pretty angry. If I knew that Champs or whomever, you name a restaurant, was coming north of 13 if they otherwise had the opportunity. So I think the reason conditional is so nice is because it allows for the ongoing discussion. Is this a financially stable company? Do they have funding? Does it make sense? Are the other restaurants on 13 now more compatible to a restaurant? Is it a takeout place where there's not going to be a parking issue? I mean, I really think the conditional use gives us the ongoing discussion of whether something is a viable business in an area or whether we ought to draw the line now, because to your point, we have to start this conversation over and go through the entire process with planning, EDC, and city council if we find an attractive business that wants to come to Burnsville through our marketing efforts, if we go ahead and take this through the process now. So, and I don't dismiss the research that's been done, I just think that ought to be a part of the thought process.
Copy? You raise your finger?
No.
Okay, we do have a motion to recommend to staff, just what we've got up on top, staff recommends the Economic Development Commission recommend the City Council approval of the amendment of the numbers of Burnsville City Code regarding permitted and conditional uses as outlined in the attached study and proposed amendment. And what I heard was, and to instruct staff to look into the possibility of changing the border of the north border of 13 property to a commercial. Am I saying that right?
Well, Mr. Chair, if possible, I would broaden the recommendation for staff to look at potentially rezoning parcels south of Cliff Road that are currently zoned I-1 and evaluate whether any changes are made. I don't know what's behind the high school. I don't know what's adjacent, the adjacent parcels on the west side to the B4 zone, but I think it's important to evaluate that if we're going to try to develop that area properly. So if the commission agrees, I would broaden the recommendation.
Okay. Skip, have you got that?
I would second that.
What I have down, Commissioners, as a motion is that the Economic Development Commission is recommending a approval of the proposal before you with a review of the zoning north of 13, south of Cliff.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Chris,
Thank you,
for
Commissioner.
presentation. Okay, we've got review a requested amendment to contract for private development between Burnsville EDA and the United Properties Residential LLC. Skip is going to present that.
My technical advisor is helping me out. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The item before you has to do with a EDA-approved development contract for United Properties Residential. To just refresh where we're at, in the heart of the city, the parcel we're looking at is this vacant land, Burnsville Parkway, 125th, First Avenue. This originally was going to be 3 condominium buildings, one of which was built under the banner of Uptown Landing. Developer has since gone bankrupt, sold this parcel to another developer who has never decided to develop. United Properties came before both EDC and EDA last year with a proposal to do a senior cooperative under their brand called Applewood Point. That contract was approved. They are asking for some changes in that contract. Here are some pictures of some of their Applewood Point product in other cities. As you can see, it is a very, very good product. Sketch plan of what their development would look like. Very limited on-site parking. This would be the senior cooperative. There would be underground parking for all of the units. Obviously, you can see a tremendous amount of landscaping and everything else. Very, very, very nice development. They're requesting a couple of minor amendments to their contract. What has occurred is they have been going through a pre-sale process. Their loan requires them to have 60% of the units pre-sold. Right now, they feel that they have 20 of them solidly pre-sold. So one of the amendments that they are asking for is in the contract to reduce the number of units from approximately 53 to approximately 44. Obviously, that brings down the number of pre-sales they need, and they believe that they can accomplish those pre-sales this summer. The contract also right now has a closing date. It says close by July 1st of this year. They're
It says
requesting.
2104, but we'll,
Oh, thank you. You know, I've made that mistake multiple times. It's a good thing someone catches me. They're requesting that that be changed to close by August 31st of this year. Basically, give them 2 additional months before they go to closing. That'll allow them time to go through our planning commission and get some of their approvals for this project. It'll also give them time to wrap up all of those pre-sales. And then we will also make a third minor amendment that actually just cleans up the description of the parcel that they're actually going to be developing and clarifies that it's an exclusion from the parcel that the current condo building sits on. All other details of that contract that the EDA approved last year would remain the same. Staff feels this is still a very good proposal. The Applewood Point is a very good product. It's a high-end product. Has a lot of amenities for the folks that come there. This project is still the same great project it was when this was approved last year. The only difference is we're going to have 6 or 7 less units. The project is still going to utilize land that is currently tax delinquent. And quite frankly, if this project does not move forward by the end of summer, that land is going to go on the auction. If that land is auctioned off, we actually lose some of our control to keep that an owner-occupied type of development. So there's a number of reasons why moving this project forward is very, very beneficial. Staff would recommend that the EDC recommend that the EDA approve the requested amendment, and I would certainly stand for any questions that the Commission has.
Commissioners?
And excuse me, Mr. Chair, I should also point out that there is a representative from United Properties Residential who is here, and he certainly could answer any questions you have also.
Commissioners? Commissioner Rivers?
I assume if the changes are made and the sales still don't hit 60%, then it just goes on the auction block for the land?
I think I'm going to let the representative, if you want to come up, Alex, and answer that question.
I think that's what he said.
Good evening, Alex Hall with United Properties. That would be accurate. If we wouldn't go below the 44 units that we're proposing, it becomes really not a feasible project for us once you go below that. So we're very confident at this point that we have the pre-sales for the 44 homes. In fact, we have a legal meeting on Monday where we pass out legal documents to all the reservation holders, and then shortly thereafter next week we're going to begin converting reservations to sales agreements. So we're moving forward with the intent over a 6 to 8 week period of hitting the pre-sales and then authorizing construction documents and going through the municipal approval process. We have the application due next week, coming into the city with the Planning Commission, City Council taking place in July. And so that is our schedule right now.
Commissioner?
Are the units going to get bigger, or is the building going to get smaller?
The building is getting smaller, so what we've done is taken out, you've got units on either side of a central corridor, so we took out one stack, so 4 units from each side. And so when you were looking at the site plan that showed the ends pushed out fairly close to the property line, those come in. So it's actually a smaller footprint, and there's going to be more landscaping.
Commissioner Johns?
You say you have 20 people already to enter into the purchase contract. Do you have 6 prospective members? Is that what?
Yeah, we actually think we have more than 20. Marketing reported, we had a marketing meeting yesterday, and they feel we're within probably 2 buyers of that 26 person target. But what we feel will probably happen once people realize that we're converting and the project is real, they move from that maybe column to, yep, we're on board.
Define pre-sale. Is there a large earnest check?
15% down. So
Okay.
pre-sale, it is a HUD guaranteed master mortgage and project. So HUD requires us to pre-sale 60% of the units, and pre-sale in their mind is 15% of the home value down.
Comments? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Commissioner Johns? Go ahead. You want, as we've got it right here?
Right, as we have it right here.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Chris? Okay, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed?
Commissioner, I need to abstain from a vote.
Okay.
Good luck. Be a nice addition.
Okay, Skip, you've got the updates, I assume?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We did provide you with the activity as it relates to our Burnsville STEM Alliance. I would just draw your attention to one item in the activity report. As you know, on a quarterly basis, we send out an electronic newsletter called The Microscope to all of the folks that in Burnsville that are within the STEM area and all of the any interested people beyond Burnsville. Our communications department actually tracked when the April newsletter went out, tracked what is known as the open rate. That is, somebody actually took a look at the newsletter, and it had a 43% open rate. That compares, my communications department tells me, with typically you'd look at about a 20 to 21% open rate. So we are actually getting very good viewership of that newsletter and the activities that go on as it relates to the STEM Alliance. The only other thing that I would remind the commission of is next Thursday is the BACREC, the Burnsville Commercial Real Estate Council bus tour. We'll have, right now we have 35 brokers signed up. We'll probably be somewhere around the 40 number by next Thursday. Going to take them, showcase 5 buildings, come back to the Ames Center for a reception. That reception starts at 4 o'clock. Obviously, everyone on the commission is invited to that reception. If you're coming, just give me the heads up so that we have the appropriate amount of seating and food. Should be a very, very good event, and the building owners are excited, and from the responses I've gotten from the brokers, they seem to be kind of excited. Give them some networking time, too, as they're on the bus driving from building to building. And again, I would stand for any questions regarding either of those items.
Was that a picture of the actual bus?
Commissioner Kleppe, no, thank goodness, that was not a picture of the actual bus that went out on the invites, as it's been referred to around City Hall as the hippie bus. I don't even remember where I got the picture, to be honest with you.
I was thinking more liability insurance if that was the actual bus.
Any other comments? Hearing none, motion to adjourn? Motion. Second?
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
That's through it.
Good meeting, Skip.
Yep.
Thank you, Commissioners.
That conversation was very good and then very good.